Hello and welcome back. So for today's mini lesson, we are going to be bringing in ourselves with all our complications to our reading. Today's mini lesson is going to be a little bit different. I'm going to read a poem and ask you to very privately, without looking around, take your writing utensil and mark you two places or in your notebook where you feel a strong response. I want you to mark parts where the poet especially makes you think or feel something. You can put a star or a heart or a dot, whatever you want on those special parts. Ready? Okay. A man crosses the street in rain, stepping gently, looking 2 times north and south, because his son is asleep on his shoulder. No car must splash him. No car drive too near to his shadow. This man carries the world's most sensitive cargo, but he's not marked. Nowhere does his jacket say fragile. Handle with care. His ear fills up with breathing. He hears the hum of a boy's dream deep inside him. We're not going to be able to live in this world if we're not willing to do what he's doing with one another. The road will only be wide. The rain will never stop falling. So I paused to let the power of the poem settle, and I'm sure you have started at least one part. If you haven't, please do so now. All right, let's have a turn and talk. Let's share a line that mattered most with you and the people near you. Ready? Go. Wow. So it seems to me that different people in the class responded to totally different parts of the poem, and that we each responded to different parts that speak to our own lives and even in some instances to the groups to which we belong. Some of you really honed in on this sense of family in this poem and reflected on the adults in your lives who have cared for you. I love that. Others of you are older siblings, and just like me, and you've considered how you sometimes play that caregiving role for a brother or sister, or multiple, or a cousin, or whoever in your life. Still, others responded to the last line. Let's go back. And that was to the sense that life will always give us rainy days, and you probably thought of the hard times in your own life. So isn't it fascinating that how we all read the same poem, but parts of different parts resonated with each of us? And that's my point. That is how reading goes. So for today's teaching point, I want to teach you that your reading experiences are shaped by more than words you read. It's the words themselves, plus what you create from meaning from a text. It's the words themselves plus what you create meaning from a text. The groups to which you identify, your character traits, and your personal histories all shape your reading. So many of you have already started to mention things that you're noticing in your books, and we're going to start to discuss that. This makes me think of a quote from a famous professor of reading. Her name is Louise Rosenblatt. Teachers all over the world have studied her work. Here's what she said. Books do not simply happen to people. People also happen to books. A story or poem or play is merely ink spots on a paper until a reader transforms them into a sea of meaningful symbols. Isn't that nice? So I think what Louise is saying is that we always bring our own experiences with us when we read, and that we make something meaningful when we combine our experiences with those ink spots on the page. So I guess that's why it's not surprising when 4 members of a book club have 4 different interpretations of a text, which I'm sure all of you are starting to notice in your own book clubs. When I'm trying to create meaning as I read, it pays off to think which parts of the book really resonate for me. Which parts connect somehow to my own life? And then I start to study those parts really closely. I can think of aspects of my life that really connect to this part. Let me give you an example. So when I read Shoulders, I especially see myself in the first stanza when I reread it. I know I'm not a man with a sleeping son, but whenever I do babysit for my nephew and cousins, I find myself in the same situation with the sleeping kid I carry on with my shoulder with such care. And if he's asleep in another room, I often check on him about 17 or 25 times in 30 minutes just to make sure they're okay. For me, I think it's because I feel his intense love for my nephew. And I really want to protect him from as much harm and danger as I can to keep him totally safe. Once I start to think about this in my own life, it really pays to connect back to the text and use my own personal experiences to help me see the part differently. Or at least this part of the poem. So maybe it's not just about a man trying to wake his sleeping son. Maybe it's that he has this intense love for his son and that he wants to do whatever he can to protect him. So I decided to jot down the words intense love and incredibly protective next to that stanza. And you can do the same in your own text. So do you see I'm starting to see more in the text because I'm bringing myself to it? When I find parts that are especially resonating with me, I start to study those parts really closely and use the connections to my own life. They really start to help me see the text differently as I continue to read it. So, are you ready to try this work on your own? Or at least with me? Let's look back to Shoulders and locate one of the parts that you marked, a part where you really see yourself. So give me a thumbs up when you got that part. Good. So for a minute, I want you to think about, why do you see yourself in that part? What is it about the groups that you're in, your character traits, your personal history that helps you understand that part more deeply? I want you to put your thinking caps on and think. And then let's go back to the text. I want you to start to think and see, like, how do our experiences help you to see this text, the characters, differently than you did before? Think. Now let's have a turn and talk. With your partner, I want you to share what you're thinking about this text now that you've brought yourself to it. Great. So now that you've discussed those things, I want you to also remember to jot them down in your mini lesson notes, just like I have. So right here, I put parts of the text that I found powerful, and I want you to write that part of the poem that you found powerful. Right here, I talked about what in my life is making this part meaningful. So for me, I think it's because I feel this intense love for my nephew and I want to protect him from as much harm and danger as I can, just to keep him totally safe. So whatever you shared with your partner, I want you to jot that down in the box below. And here are some anchor charts to remind us of some of our discussions that we've had with Miss Julia before and in our reading. And you have these anchor charts in your notebook, the social groups one. But if you'd like more, I'll be glad to give them. All right, so for today's mini lesson, did you see how we were able to see more in the text because we brought ourselves to it? You see how we thought about what parts of the book, or at least the text, are particularly connecting to ourselves personally? Now, returning to the text, do you see how we have more understanding? Yes, you might be having some aha moments. And that is good. It's supposed to be happening. I want you to keep these discussions going. I want you to keep jotting down your thoughts in your notes, and I cannot wait to read them. So, for independent work time, you're going to continue jotting down and working in your creative entries. Enjoy the rest of your day.